Good morning, good morning. I'm out here just looking plants over. I'm going to show you a couple of plants I'm having an issue with and show you what happened. I don't have a lot of issues going on in the garden, but when I get one that's like this, I really need to probably point it out. A lot of new, I'm looking at 3 growths popping out on that one. That's great. That is great. This is that trash bin dendrobium. It's actually doing pretty good. All the blooms have opened, and this plant has hydrated itself really, really well. I'm surprised how well it's plumped up. Its color's even gotten a lot better looking. Doesn't have its surface isn't as grainy feeling. I'm not seeing a lot of active growth. That little shoot down there has gotten taller. It's about doubled in size, but it's also putting out, I'm trying to get out of the shadow here. It's also starting to get its own roots coming out, so that's a good sign. But I really get once I get some roots popping out back here on the older stuff, I'll feel a little bit better, but that's a really good sign. I'll take that. Big new shoot popping out. That one's top heavy, needs to be replanted. Big cane coming out. It's amazing how fast those things will grow. When I feed that, it'll just take off for a day or two. It'll just grow an inch and a half, maybe an inch a day it seems like. And then it'll slow down over a period of several days to it looks like it's almost not growing again, just slowly growing. And by that time it's time to water again, and they get fed again, and it'll take off and do the exact same thing. Take off and grow like crazy for a couple days. As it uses the nutrients up, it slows down a little bit. So it just shows you, if you give a nice steady constant supply of nutrients, it would just grow, probably very quickly. That one's just coming right out of the pot. Everything's wrong direction. I may take that one out and replant it just so I can keep it back in the pot, or that might be a good candidate for getting mounted. I don't know. Another big shoot. This one's growing a nice big cane. Put another one out too. I'm noticing a definite difference. Once the nutrients are kind of dialed in, and it's so important, that calcium nitrogen ratio. So important. I'm noticing things like this on a lot of plants. Sherry baby, big new growth, another new growth coming out down there. New shoots. Anyway, I forget what I'm doing. Just sit here and start looking at roots and new canes and bulbs and shoots and stuff. I get hooked on that. I will give you an update on this speciosum, Dendrobium speciosum. But I'm really pleased with what I'm seeing here. It hasn't yet jumped right on top of the limestone, but it's definitely happy, or happier. But if it keeps bunching up, it's just started coming out like this, but if it keeps bunching up, excuse me, I'll start to get worried. But if it just takes off like it looks like it's going to and goes right down into that limestone, then it was a good decision. We'll see. There's lava up underneath some of this limestone. There's some lava deep down in that pot to lighten the pot up a little bit, so it's not quite so heavy. The limestone can get a little bit heavy, but once this plant fills out, and it's from the sounds of it, from what other people have told me, that's going to fill out real fast. The having a little support or ballast on the bottom won't hurt. So wow, just the shoots, just everything's just really taken off. So let me show you what I got going on here. I knew this was going on for a while, and I didn't do anything about it. I let this go, and now this is what I have. These two phals I put in these baskets last summer. When I first planted them up, and they did great all summer and into the winter, and then about midwinter I noticed a change, something happening, and then now late winter here, first of spring, they're really getting bad. I've removed all the media from them. When I first planted these up in those baskets, they were planted in just big chunks of red oak. It was off of a piece of firewood. I cut it up, and that hindsight, firewood is seasoned, means it's left out to, it's cut down, it's left to dry out, and the decay process starts, and that's why it's seasoned. And choosing the right piece of wood, and that's what this is. This show really is about choosing the wrong piece of wood. This piece of red oak firewood, which it's a hardwood. Red oak is a hardwood, but there must be something very acidic about it. Anyway, the media that I took out, the pieces of red oak that I took out of here that have only been in there since, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago, had mold on them, had fungus on them, had little mushrooms growing on them. It was absolutely horrible. And I had put a little moss on the top of these guys to help them hydrate, and that was all hidden up underneath it. So, and that's what I get for not paying attention. Anyway, I've removed the media. I'm letting these roots heal over for a few days, and they're going to start getting a little bit of nutrients, but I can't feed them normal nutrients because the roots are dead in the baskets. If I give them normal nutrients, they can't absorb it. They don't have enough decent roots to be able to absorb anything. This plant over here has no roots at all. The roots are very, very poor while they're in there. No live tips or anything like that. I've got to get some active growth on that, or that one I'll lose. I did spray this plant really good last night with a mixture of CalMag and some magnesium, a few things like that, because absorbing through the leaves, they can get things very, very quickly that way to help. I'm trying to trigger something, trying to trigger anything in this one. It's trying to branch off typical, you know, like phal in a grocery store kind of thing. Still trying to bloom, or going to bloom, and dying in the basket. This one I'm afraid I might lose because of what's happened. I'm pretty sure the pH has dropped, and because of that, it's not growing roots anymore. It can't absorb calcium, so the growing stops. And my room is warm. It's encouraging for growth. It's telling these plants to keep growing, but without the calcium, the nutrients are flowing, and what happens? I get roots that start dying back horribly. This is kind of the same situation, but it's led to multiple deficiencies, and this whole situation is the same thing. The red oak inside that basket, I guess from repeatedly getting wet and moist and staying more moist inside that basket with the moss on it, it went south. pH dropped, no calcium being absorbed. I've said before, calcium, if you're low on calcium, you're going to be low on magnesium. It inhibits the absorption of magnesium. If you look at this plant, this is a great example of multi-symptoms too. Remember that mobile chart? Mobile nutrient chart? Older growth, newer growth. This is the older leaves down here. See the issue on them? The older leaves are real light and pale. The newer leaves are darker. This is a mobile nutrient issue. The issue is on the older leaves, so it's a mobile nutrient issue. This is a nitrogen and a magnesium issue. If you look at this leaf, you notice it has a dark ring around the edge right here. I've referred to it before as a halo. You'll see a halo effect on the leaves. And it's lighter in the center. I hope it shows up on film. It's real obvious anyway from my eye, but it may not show up on the video very well. But that's a perfect example of magnesium deficiency. The fading right here that you're seeing is nitrogen being pulled up to the newer leaves, keep them nice and green. The older leaves have gotten lighter. And if you look at this leaf up here, it has some mottling on it also. Some mottling. That's magnesium also, a sign of magnesium too. Stunted growth, weird growth, look how it's shaped. Nitrogen issues, magnesium issues. Because they've probably been blooming a lot, I probably have a little bit of potassium even issue. Regardless, all brought on by one thing, and that's the drop of the pH, and I didn't pay attention to the media breaking down, and my pH went below 5, which is super quick to do, super easy, and what happens? boom, things shut down. Now this one has a lot more air roots. It has a handful sticking out the bottom and around the sides that still have some active tips on them. And I think that's why this one's half growing, and why, because the room is telling it to grow, it's trying to get nutrients. It has a handful of air roots around the pot. And so it's getting some nutrients, but not enough, and that's why it borrowed it from its reserves. And remember, I've said before, I don't want my plants growing from reserves, because this is what happens. I don't know if I can reverse this right here. This, even though these don't look bad right now, they're misshapen, they're odd shaped. The plant will look goofy. None of the leaves are the same size on the whole plant. It'll look goofy for a while until it outgrows it. This leaf has a chance, but I bet this one will even have something weird as it comes out. Even with the nutrients start coming out better, it may have a ripple or something in it showing where it happened. Sometimes nutrient deficiencies will reflect on them like that. Anyway, I wanted to show this because this is very, very common, and I think this is leading to other issues I'm having in the garden too. It made me think about something yesterday. I was like, why the red oak and not? I'm not having an issue on other mounts, and I wonder if other plants I'm having out here. I have a handful of plants I'm having issues with, and I was starting to wonder why I keep having the same issue with these plants and why they're slowly declining. And I'm changing the nutrients, trying to change things around, changing things around. Everything else is growing very well, but I have a handful that are struggling, and I'm wondering why. And I think this was a big link to it. I think this really helped me out. I don't know if I can get this plant because it's already dipped into reserves, and it's the way it feels and is acting. I'm not sure if it'll come back. I'm going to hit it again with foliar sprays again today to see if I can get something into it. This leaf for the first time today feels like it's a little more hydrated than it used to. So I'm going to see if I can't get something started. If not, I'll probably lose that one. This one has a chance to make it. If I can get some active root growth on it, get something to pop out. But all I'm going to do right now is light calcium, magnesium, very light amounts, just little tiny amounts. Not as strong as I would feed normal plants because they don't have good roots. They can't absorb it. It'd be like giving you hot soup and no spoon, and you can't eat it. Anyway, just tiny little amounts, and maybe a little seaweed and kelp to give them some protein, vitamins, hormones to help trigger something maybe, and just watch them. With the media out of the baskets, I can keep them rinsed now. The pH issue shouldn't be a problem. I've just got to watch for growth. I can keep track of them better this way too. So if I put something back in there, which I may not, if I can get them to start growing again, they don't really need a media. They can grow bare root just fine. This one's gotten a little bit loose, but I think it'll tighten up as it starts to grow. But I could put some lava rock or something in there, but I won't be putting wood back in there. Not red oak anyway. But let me show you what this is. I started thinking again. It's that why question. That why question. I wanted to show this because I'm proud to say I don't have a lot of issues happening in the garden. So when I get something that really is significant, I want to show it, but at the same time I also want to wow, that thing is just going crazy. I love that. That green is vibrant. But I wanted to share that, especially since I think has something to do with another problem I'm having. All the mounts, this is cypress, cedar. I've got some hickory. This is red oak. This fowl, which is struggling, is on red oak. That's cypress. That one I just showed you, that's just going crazy. Or no, that's heart pine, but just going crazy. This plant's going crazy. It's on a piece of heart pine. This one right here, this dendrobium, which hasn't bloomed for me, is growing. Grew a great big cane. Is growing another one. Has these crazy roots. But let me show you if I can without dropping everything. You see the bottom of the mount? See that? I'm having that recurring issue on this. And on the back side, you see the dark? See the dark I'm getting? And I've noticed the roots in that area. See how they are? They don't like it. They're struggling. Whereas everything down here is green tips and pretty and looking well. But I'm having some issues around that. This is a piece of red oak. Matter of fact, this may be off the same piece of wood as what was in the phals. And it's having some issues. Everything down here that's doing great is on cedar, cypress. This is a piece of red oak, this little Tempensis, and it's having a couple little issues. It's having some issues. It's struggling. It's getting good nutrients, and for the longest time it was doing great, and now it's struggling a little bit. And I'm noticing I'm having some issues on the wood. That there's that dark color, and the roots don't like it when it starts to turn dark like that. I think it's the decay process, probably a rust type fungus or something. This plant right here, this dendrobium, this is on a piece of cypress, and not a sign of any rot, anything, and the roots are just, they're singing, they're so happy. Not a dead root amongst them, green tips on everything, just entirely different, entirely different. Even though that plant's doing well, I've noticed in some parts I keep losing the roots on it. I'm like, why? And I'm having issues with the wood starting to show signs of decay. A couple little ones, same thing, and they're all red oak. Every single one that's having that issue is on red oak. Here's one that's really starting to bother me, and I've had this issue for a while with it. This is that little star breastful, little star nodosa. Look at the back. First couple of times I scrubbed it off real good and sprayed it with some fungicide and stuff, and never had any issues. And then it's starting to come back now, and it's more resistant. I've noticed it's starting to get that dark color, and roots are dying back. Roots are having some issues. I'm seeing green tips pop out, but then they're dying back again. And I'm getting that fungus or whatever it is that's starting to collect around them. New growth right there. I hate to say it, I hate to do it, but I think I'm going to have to pull that off there. That's really going to set that plant back, but I think I'm going to end up losing it if I don't. Red oak, it's on a piece of red oak. This little cattleya up here, which has been struggling, and it shouldn't be. It was a strong grower when it first put it up there. It grew like crazy. But now, and it's on a red oak, I've noticed that see that little fungus? And look, see it? Darkness on the wood, and the roots don't look good. As it starts that decay process, that pH drops and it pulls it out of the range, and these plants are struggling. They're having a hard time because they're living on something that's out of the pH range. This one right here that did so good when I first put this plant on here, it did so good. It was growing and growing and growing and growing and did so well. Now it's struggling to stay hydrated. It's got a new growth on the side, and it's got new roots coming out, but everything else is just keeps going back, keeps going back, keeps going back, dying back, dying back. And the wood is getting a darker color to it. And I've got maybe a little bit of stuff starting there. I'm wondering if it, again, red oak. I think that red oak has more acid to it, and I'm new to orchids, so I'm trying to learn. Cypress, cedar, no problems, no problems. Anything that's on anything but red oak. This is red oak. Again, this one is always struggled. Always struggled. It grew great at first, just crazy, and then now it's struggling. And I'm having the same thing. And the wood is getting that darker color to it. And it's on red oak. This dendrobium. See this piece of wood? Notice how clean it is? There's nothing on it. No mold, nothing. It's nice, even color. Green root tips all over the place. This one's got a new cane coming out. This is hickory. This is a piece of hickory. No mold issues, nothing. It's doing very, very well. I guess my point is red oak. So I've got a handful of, I hate to lose those. I'm taking them off those mounts is going to almost destroy them, especially since they're not in great shape to begin with. So I've got a handful of plants that I've got issues with caused by the wrong choice of wood. Without a doubt, that's got to have something to do with the red oak part. So I won't be recommending red oak for mounting anymore. Not at all. I think it just builds up too much acid, I think, as it starts the decay process. I've got a handful of little mounts that are on pieces of red oak. Some are on hickory that are doing better. Some are on red oak. So I have to be more choosy, more careful for sure. I may lose a couple of plants because of that. anyway, I wanted to share that. Screw-ups happen all the time. Like this little foul, I was looking at this right after I realized that red oak was the issue. I started looking at this and was, I've got the same thing happening here. Although it's not going to help that plant to remove it from there. I've got new growth started. It would be no better time than right now to take that plant off that and try and save it. This is the first foul I ever got, and it's been struggling, and I couldn't figure out why, because the others are all doing so well, just doing so well, and that one is struggling for some reason. Now I think I know. So, ooh, I hate to do this, but I may have to soak some plants and pull them out of their basket, or pull them off their mounts. It's not what I want to do, but I wanted to share this. I hope this helps somebody, and I'll show you what happens to these guys, good or bad. I'll show you what happens. I'm just going to give them light nutrients and see if I can't trigger some growth on them. I can trigger growth on everything else, so if I can't trigger them on this, I think they're too far gone. But this one I have more hope in than this one, but who knows? They were rescues when I got them. This was out of the trash at my daughter-in-law's house, and this was off the rescue table at Lowe's. It was destined for the dumpster, so we'll see. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful afternoon. And thanks for all those kind words and comments. And I hope this makes sense.